Hello, friends, engineers, and developers all. Welcome to another segment here on Embedded Insiders. I am Ken Briota. I'm the editor-in-chief of Embedded Computing Design and your host today. And I'm so happy to be here with Marcello Majonchi of Arduino and now Qualcomm. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Ken. Really happy to be here with you.
So happy to be here and to get a chance to chat today. Um, our audience of engineers and developers, the first thing they're going to want to know is, are they still going to be able to build and hobby and work with Arduino? They all love Arduino. Tell us about the things that are going to be continuing under the new organization.
Well, I'm happy to report, right, that in almost a year, right after the acquisition, things are really going well in the sense that we really keep not only the same pace of innovation that we used to keep before the acquisition, right, but we're actually moving faster and bigger, right, because not only we continue to work on the same technologies that we kind of used to work before, and we are we kept a pace of release of products not based on Qualcomm technology, and we are continuing to release this type of products. But on top of that, we're of course releasing quite exciting new products based on Qualcomm technology. However, with the same spirit, namely the same licenses that we
Hmm.
used before. Right.
Right.
So, just to give you a couple of examples, right? The last, two major products on Qualcomm technology that we released, of course, the Arduino Uno Q and Arduino App Lab, which is the developer environment for the Arduino Uno Q. The
Yep.
hardware was released with the same Creative Commons license that we use for, any other Arduino board. And App Lab and all its components have been released on GitHub, source code with the same GPL3 licenses that we've been using. So,
Yeah.
it's more of the same, if you will, but it's, the good same, right? It's the good stuff. So we're really happy about it.
Absolutely. Uh, there was a lot of mixed emotions when folks started hearing about the acquisition because, as you know, Arduino is a beloved company. Everybody loves an Arduino board, and sometimes in an acquisition by a larger entity, things change about culture or product, or there are mandates from on high that didn't exist before, and folks were a little bit worried about that. And so I'd like to assuage, if possible, or report to people if there's changes that they should expect. So can we talk a little bit about just the transition and how it's been going and um what the experience has been like for the Arduino team? So let's start with um what's been how has it been feeling? How's it been going for this integration?
Well, I'm kind of, just looking. I'm in my office here in Torino, right, which is the Arduino headquarters, and literally, I'm looking. I have a big window, and there is a lot of the Arduino team, the product team, and a bunch of engineers and content creators here. And I'm just looking over, and things are surprisingly similar to what they used to be before the acquisition, right? There is, literally, I can see any Qualcomm logo here, just Arduino logos like the one behind. And jokes aside, Arduino is to this day an independent subsidiary, right? In as part of
Mhm.
Qualcomm. So we kept our independence and also a mandate to just do what we do best, right? Which is talk to developers, be developers, and really think about the products that first and foremost we would love to use ourselves, right? And this has been the spirit. This has been the the approach that hopefully translated into the culture that as leadership we're able to kind of to share with the rest of the team. And so the mood is great. The feeling is that we get to play with very cool technology. Now, maybe, one of the things that actually have changed, right? We have a bunch of, developer kits that we didn't have before, right? With very kind of, cool and fancy, new chipsets and so on that we get to play
Yep.
with. So on
Yeah.
that, from that standpoint, it's actually really cool. But
Yep.
other than that, same, openness, same, developer first mindset because we are developer ourselves. And same real goal to kind of build something that can be shared with the community and is something that is not just pushed there and then forgotten about. It's just something that is meant to be shared so that people can, work on it, open the hood, see how it's done, contribute to it, and
Mhm.
amplify, right, the overall, spirit on top of the technology itself.
Yeah, and that's incredible to hear. I mean, that's the I could obviously see that that things were continuing and you guys were still innovating and stuff, but to hear it directly from you feels really good. Um, you mentioned changes. Obviously, changes come. What are some of the changes you've been experiencing or that you're expecting? I mean, obviously, you've got access to a lot of stuff at Qualcomm that you didn't have before, but but other than that, what other changes have you been experiencing?
Well, from a personal standpoint, right, I get to travel to San Diego way more often than I used to, which is not necessarily a bad thing, given that, there
No,
are worse
no.
places to be traveling to. But again, jokes aside, right, I would say that the main change is, of course, access to technology, right? Of course, historically, Arduino has collaborated very closely with a lot of, different silicon manufacturers. And, that was kind of, an internal joke, right, that, despite being a very small company, every single one of the big guys wanted to work with us,
Yeah.
right? And we are continuing to do that, and we are still
Okay.
working with all the other kind of big names. But of course, we have this, really kind of unfiltered access to one of them, which is Qualcomm, so that we really get not just to use preview products like we used to from the others, but really kind of contribute back to improve these products, right? By providing our feedback. We are kind of in a way also not just a subsidiary of Qualcomm, but also consider sort of a customer zero, if you will, right?
Yeah,
And
a test case for
a
new
test case.
things.
If it works for us, right? Because we're also similar to our community, very vocal, right? And we say what we like, but also what we don't like. And our feedback is really taking in account, and this is it feels it feels very good. It feels more than anything like a very good collaboration. And maybe because it started so, right? We started first collaborating on building products together, and then we started the discussion about acquisitions, and it's really continuing with the same, with same spirit. Just to, I'm quoting back, right? Nakul Dugal, which is the GM and EVP for IoT and industrial and automotive, which is, our kind of, our reference leader, if you will, before Cristiano, the CEO. Uh, that from a Qualcomm perspective, the goal of the acquisition has always been to try and make Qualcomm look a little bit more like Arduino and not the opposite, right? He said, I think
Yeah.
that he said that when we actually did the event when we announced the acquisition, but it really feels that way, right? And I think that that it's actually a very good signal.
Yeah, and I've reported on Qualcomm for a long time. I think if Qualcomm ends up looking a little more like Arduino, that's all to the good. So that's I think that's fun and a great mission to have and a great direction for this to go in. Um, so enough about the past and where we are now. Tell me about the future. Where, I mean, it is probably undeniable to say that Arduino now has resources within reach that you have not had before. You have scale within reach that you have not had before. Um, so, what are you planning to do that you've not done before?
Well, you see, let me take a step back, right? And this is the way that I explain, right, the history of Arduino. So this year, Arduino celebrated its 21st right year
Wow,
of life,
really?
right? Feels like yesterday, but we are kind of
I'll have
we
to
now
buy you a
can
drink, I guess.
absolutely, absolutely. I was about to say the same. Um, so in the last 21 years, right, I like to identify three different phases, right, in the history of the company. There is the original phase, right, from the early days, incubated within the in the Design Institute in Ivrea, where really the mission of Arduino was, or the goal of Arduino was to democratize electronics,
Hmm.
right? Then there was a second wave, I would say, in the mid 2010s, where really the focus shifted, right, more towards IoT and democratization of, the edge coding and connectivity, right? But
Yep.
now I would say that with the acquisition, we have moved into the third phase of the history of Arduino, which is all about democratizing AI, especially on the edge. You see,
Yeah.
I kind of see a lot of similarities in what is happening in the market. Of course, nothing to do from a technology perspective, right? But the point is that in the same way that in the early 2000s, there was an opportunity for a lot of creative people to transform products into intelligent products and connected products. What they needed was a platform and an approach that would provide all the tools in a way that was accessible to them. The same is
Hmm.
happening today with AI. There are a lot of people that have amazing ideas for new smart products and AI products, but AI is too damn hard. You need multiple PhDs, right, in order to kind of to really master that technology. And it doesn't have to be that way.
I would argue that no one has mastered it yet. So yeah, I agree.
And so, given that the common thread throughout all the 21 year of Arduino history was that our mission is to take complex technology and make them simple to use, right?
Yeah.
The complex technology these days, right, in this day and age, that is really meant to be simple to use, is AI. And this is the goal, and this is really ultimately the North Star that is guiding all the new initiatives that we are doing. The way that I like to, to call it is that, we live in a world that arguably has millions of AI users. We want to turn them into millions of AI builders, people that integrate AI in what they do, not just use AI, right, as mere consumers of it.
Right. Interesting. I like that philosophy. I'm a little bit of a within parameters AI poo-pooer. You know, I don't see a lot of value in an LLM. I don't see, beyond being a toy or whatever. Everyone listening has heard me make this rant before. But I do see a lot of value in the sort of purpose-built, small model, custom, not proprietary necessarily, but like built on the data of the thing it's going to be working on, kind of AI. And I think that Arduino is an incredible place to be working on that kind of an AI tool, because you guys are so good at that sort of compact, easy to use, edge native kind of thing that everyone's looking for in AI. So that's really cool to me. I love to hear that that's where your focus is at the moment.
Absolutely, and this, of course, right, translates into the products that we're working on. Of course, last year in November, contextually to the acquisition, we announced the Arduino Uno Q, which is the first, outcome of the collaboration, Arduino App Lab, which is the new generation of developer tools. But now we are really, getting into the last mile of, the ultimate product, right, which is already
Yeah.
previewed at Embedded World a few months back.
Yep.
Which is the Arduino Ventuno Q, which is really bringing AI right on the desks of anybody, right?
Yeah.
Because we with the Ventuno Q, we are really focusing on bringing down the access barrier, whether it is cost or complexity, for people that want to kind of have AI at the edge available for them to experiment, to learn, and to build great things. And it's a combination of accessible hardware and accessible software developer tools,
Yeah.
right? And so you will see just literally we are a few weeks away from when we will start opening sales for the Ventuno Q. You will see that there is probably no other product with the same capability at that price point in the
Yeah.
market. And also, none of the other products have such a comprehensive support from a software perspective and developer experience perspective, ranging from ultimate abstraction with Arduino App Lab that
Yeah.
really gains AI capabilities, all the way to the standard tools that you can use for kind of any other AI technology, right? So that
Yeah.
you are not constrained, but if you want, there is an epi path that will get you to level of refinement of the final kind of application that would not be possible, right, without this new approach. All sprinkled with actually AI tooling in itself, right? Because it's not just about integrating AI, but also using AI to do that.
Right.
And so you will see that we will be introducing new features in AppLab, such as the integration with agentic, coders, so that you will be able to really orchestrate your development experience through, Cloud Code, Codex, so on and so forth, because this is kind of, the type of workflow the developers are expecting. But the idea is not to disintermediate the developer, but to provide abstraction without obfuscation, so that these type of technologies would be not just easier to use, but also faster, right, and more proficient for them, right, to use in order to integrate into their projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw Hank Green do a talk about um, AI and especially code for code tools, whether it be helping write code or helping authorize or debug or whatever, as a substrate technology, a thing that's sort of like going to explode and become ubiquitous. And I find that very interesting, and I find the the thinking about that from folks like you and other folks that I've talked to, in not that it's going to replace human coders, but that it's going to make them able to create more interesting, more varied, and more mass of code at a greater scale. So that's an interesting idea.
Absolutely. You see, uh, if you put AI in the hands of someone that knows what they're doing, right, the quality of the output is going to be kind of massively kind of better, right? At the same time, AI is also enabling people that would not be able to do it without it to be able to to get somewhere, right, instead of nowhere. You also have to consider that differently from AI in the cloud, which is the most common place where AI runs these days. AI on the edge adds a new level, another layer of complexity, which is
Hmm.
the fact that it is constrained into a kind of physical form factor where compute is not infinite, right? But is
Right.
kind of, as a limit, right? Which, and also something that is physically constrained, which means that in order to be as effective as you can, AI and your tooling needs to have some degree of awareness about the physical condition of your setup, right? It's
Hmm.
not as ethereal as the cloud, right? But it needs to kind of understand exactly, right, what it's dealing with, especially if you have peripherals and so on.
Yeah.
And so one of the innovations that we're introducing in our, App Lab, tool chain is really kind of, MCP servers, not much, to tell AI what that, processor is capable, but what that system is actually, able to do, right? What are the peripherals? What are the constraints? What are, the things that can be connected in terms of sensor, actuator, and so on, so that, when you build an application, your AI will be able to understand exactly what are the condition, right? What is the perimeter of action in order to be as efficient as it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think we're at an interesting inflection point in the world with respect to this stuff, and I'm glad to see that Arduino has at least its hands on the reins. Um, now, the last question that I'd love to ask you is a question that I love to ask everybody because it I can't know everything, which means I can't always know what to ask. So what I'll ask you is, what didn't I think to ask you that the folks out there listening, our engineers and developers, really ought to know about Arduino, where you're going, maybe about the Qualcomm acquisition, maybe about something else? What do you think they should know in this moment about what you guys are doing?
I think that we briefly touched at the beginning, but it's something that is so important to me, to Arduino, but also to the community that is kind of worth double clicking on it. And the question is, but is will Arduino keep doing stuff outside of the Qualcomm technology, right? And the answer is a resound yes, right?
Mhm.
Because Qualcomm does a lot of very kind of cool things, but there are areas where simply it doesn't have products, it doesn't have technologies, but also where there are also other technologies that we love and we think that there is an added value for the community itself, right?
Yeah.
So you will see, right, starting from the coming months, you know, steady streams of new products that will have no Qualcomm technology in it, or very little Qualcomm technology that maybe not be even core. Um, uh, so we will continue to feed right into the same streams that we've been doing in the past, but also adding all these new kind of form factors and these new products, opening up new opportunities for developers for for building really cool things. And why not also to kind of experiment by assembling together, right, different products. I've actually seen some projects that are kind of combining Uno Qs and legacy Uno R3s and Uno R4s, creating kind of very interesting setups and projects. And so why not? We are always amazed and surprised by the creativity of our community. And I'm actually looking forward to see what they will be able to invent that I wasn't expecting at each new product release that we do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Marcello, for taking the time to chat with me today. This was great, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot to see from Arduino over the next months and years. So we'll be in touch again. I absolutely know it.